Raised for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. Welcome to the Hubbard County Board of Commissioners work session for Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. We have in front of us the agenda. Are there any additions or corrections?
No, none that I'm aware of, Mr. Chair.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
We don't do
Oh, we don't?
motions at the work session.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay, so on to item number 1.
I will. Good morning. I'm Eric Thorson. I'm the DNR Wildlife, Area Wildlife Supervisor, based here in the Park Rapids area. And here in Park Rapids is where my office is. And so we have a large work area, which includes all of Hubbard County. We also have a satellite wildlife office up in Bemidji. And so we manage a variety of things, but one of the things that we're land managers. So we have wildlife management areas within our work area that we manage. You might be familiar with some other WMAs in the county, the Crow Wing Chain WMA down on First and Second Crow Wing Lakes. That area is about 3,000 acres, and they also have a larger Cabacona WMA up by Cabacona Lake office, State Highway 64. And so I'm working on this project for a new WMA in Hubbard County, and I'm here with Annie. If you want to introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about the project and the funding and kind of how we got here today.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Annie Knight. I'm the Executive Director of Northern Waters Land Trust. We're a nonprofit environmental organization based in Walker, Minnesota. And our mission is to preserve land to protect water. And we do that through land acquisition, conservation easement, and community outreach. So we've been working on this project since April of 2023, working with a variety of nonprofit organizations to work with the seller to identify a solution for acquiring this property and protecting it permanently. And we have ultimately come to working with 3 parties. So Northern Waters Land Trust, Minnesota Land Trust, and the Department of Natural Resources. This property that we're talking about today has been a priority for protection for our 3 organizations for a number of years. So we're very excited about the prospect of acquiring the property. We'll be acquiring the property in mid-March with the use of 2 funding sources. Northern Waters Land Trust and Minnesota Land Trust are partners on multiple Outdoor Heritage funded grants. So we'll be using grant funding from the Outdoor Heritage Fund. And then in addition, the Department of Natural Resources will be using federal funding through their Loon program. And ultimately, the land will be purchased by Northern Waters Land Trust and Minnesota Land Trust, and then conveyed or transferred to the Department of Natural Resources to manage as the Mantrap Wildlife Management Area. We're very excited. We have local support from all of the townships that this property is in. That includes Clay Township, Lake Emma Township, Mantrap Township, and Thorpe Township.
I can pass around those resolutions and support letters as well.
Awesome, yeah.
I just have one copy, but you can certainly keep that.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, so full support from the townships that we talked to. General just excitement about the prospect of protecting this property. It's 431 acres with about 5 miles of shoreline and some of the most pristine wild areas that we have in Hubbard County. So I'll let Eric kind of talk more about the ecological values of this property and how it will be managed into the future.
Excuse me, before you go on, can you tell me, so the Outdoor Heritage Funding, is that grant dollars also? Or is that private donors?
Yeah, good question. So the Outdoor Heritage Funding is state grant funding coming from the Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment.
Thank you.
Maybe just a little orientation for the handout. So we had 3 handouts, includes 2 maps and a table. So that table shows you I think the 16 parcels that are involved in this project, the acreage and the shoreline feet, and then what township they're in. And kind of the totals as Annie mentioned, so just about 431 acres total, and 5.5 miles of shoreline. So there's that table, and then 2 different maps. I think the one with the parcels on is, I think, very similar that you included in the packet. This one just shows you the 4 different townships that are involved: Clay, Thorpe, Mantrap, and Lake Emma, kind of where the dividing is. So some townships have a larger part of this project compared to others, but you can kind of see the lines there. And then the other map, I don't think you've seen before. This is a DNR generated map. It just has LiDAR or kind of topography relief map, and it also shows the wetlands that are colored, and shows the proposed acquisition with outline in kind of tan color. So we have what we call the eastern unit, and then the western unit. And as you can see, that these are the undeveloped 3M properties on either side of the Waniwak complex, the conference center, and cabins. And so they're primarily undeveloped. There's a few small structures on these parcels, but it's mostly undeveloped land and shoreline that'll be part of this project. And then, as Annie mentioned, Kathy Don Carlos and myself met with the 4 townships that are involved in December and January. I'm presenting very similar information to them, answered their questions, got their feedback, and got their support. So you can see in the packet that I passed around that we're quite supportive of the project. Had a few questions kind of on how WMAs are managed and that type of thing. So wildlife management areas are state lands that are managed mostly for non-motorized outdoor recreation, primarily hunting and fishing, and we're managing for wildlife habitat and protecting from development. And so allowed uses would be bird watching, fishing, hunting, trapping, hiking, snowshoeing, that type of thing. So we generally don't have a lot of user developments on our properties, but do maintain parking lots, gates, maintain hunter walking trails, that type of thing. So usually fairly limited and kept in a fairly natural state for the enjoyment of the public. So we did have the privilege of visiting these properties 3 times this past fall in October. Personally, I've lived in the community here for 20 years, and I've just driven by on County Road 24, so I've never been on the property, and it really is quite a property. It really, I've seen a lot of beautiful places in this part of the world, and really unique and kind of awe-inspiring property with great views and natural shorelines and wild rice and beautiful big pines, and really a unique area. So we went out there to do initial assessment with the site managers of the property. Also went back out there with DNR forestry staff to kind of make an initial evaluation of kind of the old growth potential of some of the pine stands and some of the older forests that are present on the unit. And we kind of wrote up a little initial preliminary report about there. So there's certainly old growth potential there. We have some red pine that was up to 200 years old on the property, and a lot of red pine of various ages, from 100 to 200 years, and a lot of natural regeneration as well. Some very large white pine up to 36-inch DBH. Hard to get the age on those because they have kind of rotten centers to them. They've been around a long time, but big, huge trees. So not that the area hasn't been logged before, but there's certainly trees there that have probably were left after pre-settlement logging or during pre-settlement logging, and found a very old oak stand as well. So some pretty unique resources there. There's quite a network of trails on Waniwak already, and that actually have trails that go all the way up to the main points on the lake. And then also on the western side, there's trails that go up to the property line just south of the campground, south of the public access for Big Man Trap. So there's quite a network of hunter walking trails. And our intent would be to maintain most, if not all, of those trails, probably with some annual mowing and clearing, just to make them accessible to the public and to hunters. And on the western unit, how that would be accessed is there's a stone pillars and a metal gate right on the north side of County Road 24. And so that would be the main access point for that particular side of the unit. And we could go north from there, and that trail goes up to the south side of the campground. And then also the western unit is accessible on the south end, right along the road there, that South 40. The eastern unit would be a little bit more difficult for management. We looked at a site right off of County Road 24 west of the Bell home or inclusion. I think we would likely propose putting a little parking lot in there for a few vehicles and then having a connecting trail along the north side of that Bell inclusion right across from the resort on Upper Bottle to have hunter or walking access into their existing trail system on Waniwak. And then you could walk all the way up to the north end of the property on those 2 points there and around the south side of the lake. So trying to think what else there is. Yeah, and just, there's certainly wild rice, in the connecting channel between Mantrap Lake and Bottle Lake, and some nice wetlands as well, and half of the private lake, Petite Lake. On the eastern side, there is an undeveloped access there available for walking, so the public will be able to walk and access that. But we don't have any plans, I guess, to have any drive-up access or anything there, but that is a fishing lake there as well. It had been stocked by trout by Waniwak in the past, but it does whole fish, natural or native fish as well. So I guess that is kind of the background on our activities to date and what is out there for resources. And I guess at this time, maybe open up for feedback and input or any questions you would have.
Well, you answered one that I had when that was, it would seem like the access all fanned out from Waniwak's developed area.
Yeah.
But it sounded like you got ways to get up to the other area.
Yeah, it's true, but that stone gate and metal gate there on the west access provides good, so it goes kind of straight up. There's kind of a natural opening there already, so it'd just be a matter of maybe putting a load or two of gravel in there in a gate, and then that trail access, the northern part, and then that 40 to the south is accessible right off of the road. And I mentioned the eastern unit, the main road goes through the Waniwak property there, so it makes it more challenging. So that's why we'd have to develop a small kind of connector trail on the south end there. But there's room to do that, and if we can get a permit, to put an approach and probably a parking lot in there, that would be sufficient for that access on the eastern part. You're probably wondering about PILT as well. So this would be acquired land for wildlife, and so it would be eligible for 0.75% of the appraised value for PILT payments to the county. And so I just had looked at, we haven't got any definite figures yet because the appraisal is not public information yet. But I looked at the 2024 estimated market value and 2025 estimated market values for all the parcels involved, from the county. And based off of those figures, and you're just multiplying that by 0.75% for an annual payment would be, 40,000 or more in a PILT payment annually. And currently, the 2024 property taxes on all these parcels combined was about $25,400, so should be about $15,000 more in PILT payments. But as I mentioned, that is just an estimate, and the final numbers won't come in until the appraisal is public and finalized.
Who would do the appraisal? According to what the county would assess it at, or value it at?
I think it's a state appraisal.
We have the appraisal done by a certified state appraiser as a part of our Outdoor Heritage Fund requirements.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear about the PILT payment, because I had totaled up the 2025 amount, and it was 28,000. I was gonna be wondering, maybe not a question for you, but it's something internally for us to talk about. How do we make up for that 28,000? But sounds like PILT payment's gonna take care of it.
Yeah,
Well, then I'm even much more for it then.
okay, very good. Yeah, generally, PILT payments in this part of the state are pretty favorable, you know,
Okay.
compared to existing property taxes. I can certainly pass this around too, we can keep that. I guess I didn't have the 2025 property taxes there, so likely went up, like you said, but still, you know, 40,000 would be more.
So I think it's more than just about PILT payments. Obviously, it's about protecting the environment, but it's also, in my mind, looking at the properties about best use. And I have no problem with the eastern parcels. A lot of that is, I think best use is to protect it, protect the lake. But with the lake being, what, 3% of it or less is even developed, when I look at the eastern parcels, I see best use for parcels 1601 400 and 1601 500 as riparian lots. If you analyze how many riparian lots can fit in there, you're talking a minimum of 12 on the lakeshore. The average taxable market value of a home built on Big Mantrap Lake is in excess of $1 million. So if you applied $1.5 million, you're talking somewhere between $25 and $40 million of taxable market value in the future. At a 1% tax classification rate, that's $400,000 a year in taxes. That's gone, compared to $40,000 in PILT. And
Yeah, I mean,
those would be highly sought-after parcels and lots in there, because that bay is a deep bay, it's 50 feet deep. I've been in there, I've recreated in there, Waniwak recreates in there all the time, they used it for skiing, and their access is right there, you can see where their boat and their boathouse was. So in my mind, at least those two parcels, I get like 1601 300, there's a lot of low-lying land, it's right next to the campground. If you had any visions of expanding the campground there with more camping spaces, you'd probably be interested in that property. But the other three to the south, I couldn't support. I think its best use would be for private development.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain,
Serve the best interests of the county.
yeah, I mean, and there certainly is developable areas on the shoreline, as you can see from the topo map, there's a lot of upland there that's very accessible. So certainly, I mean, I think that's a concern from others in the community too, that they would have been developed, all this natural land. You know, I just point out that, you know, we're not doing it, you know, all the buildings are gonna remain intact, and I don't know what 3M is gonna do with that property, sell it, but, whoever is the owner of Waniwak, you know, those, you know, anybody from the public, as long as they follow the WMA rules, can use these lands according to, you know, the WMA rules. So, and they are protected from development. So that is a choice to make, whether you favor conservation or you favor development and increased taxes. But they are, you know, I think it's a one-of-a-kind property. I don't think you'll find anything like that in northern Minnesota, and certainly will be a draw. And you know, I think a lot of support from the community and lakes to, you know, keep them in an undeveloped state and protect the resources that are there. I should also mention, you know, fisheries is very supportive of this project as well. You know, there's great fishing on Mantrap Lake, as many of us know, including, you know, a muskie fishery, and they identified a lot of great spawning grounds, especially in that bay to the southwest. Those carib beds there, and then elsewhere on these shorelines. So they were very, very excited to hear that the potential to have this land protected for conservation and protect those shorelines for the aquatic habitat as well. So I don't.
If I could expound on something that David talked about, so the public would further understand. I'm not sure the townships, when the project was explained, we hear a lot of complaint about taxes.
Mhm.
So, and you were saying whether you're for conservation or for development, I don't see this as a for one or the other. I think there can be a compromise, and I would agree with Dave that the eastern shore I'm fine with. I'm actually against the 400, the 500, and the 1700. So here's what's happening currently in the state of Minnesota. And obviously, the legislature hasn't done anything budget-wise, but we all know that there's a looming $5 billion tax shortage in the budget. That's projected. Governor Walz has come out with his proposed budget, and I know it'll be worked on, but the current proposed budget is shifting what the state has currently funded. They're shifting $840 million to the counties if that was approved as is. They do not want to cut any programs. The two programs that are the highest costing in the state of Minnesota is the Department of Education and Health and Human Services. The counties only have one way to raise money, and that's to increase the levy. How does the levy get increased? Property tax. David brings up a good point. We asked Eric yesterday, ESO, he actually divided out these 3 lots. There is a potential between those 3 parcels to develop 35 or 43 lots. There's no way that it can only equal $40,000 in payment equal to what the potential is.
Yeah, I was comparing it to past taxes.
I
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but I'm comparing it to future. PILT payment, from what we understand is we go to the Minnesota Association of Counties. That's also at the whim of legislatures and the dollar amount, so that also can change. Schools currently are very, they're wondering how they can enforce all the mandates that have been mandated from the state, because they also are receiving cuts in the proposed budget. So to me, why can't you compromise here? You have all kinds of land, and there's good uses for both. But this would help the townships and the counties, not only from their perspective for possible dollars in property tax, but it would also help economically as people come in and build.
And yes, you did get support from the townships. I reached out to some of them and talked to them, but the problem is you don't convey what it can be.
Yep.
And when you don't
And I
convey
think,
what it
I think
can
they have an understanding that it could be developed.
Yeah, but they didn't really put any numbers to it. When I explained it to them, it was like a aha moment. It's like, oh,
At 35 to 43 lots, that's a lot of value.
You know, what we heard from, we heard various things from various townships. I mean, they were certainly interested in protecting land from development. They were concerned, whether ATVs would be able to use the property, and they said, no, that would be against WMA rules. They were concerned about excessive timber harvests, and they said, we are part of planning with forestry. That would certainly be part of the potential management out there, but it would be done in a way that follows sustainable use principles and DNR planning. There was concern about PILT as well, and what the tax implications would be compared to their existing, taxes on the unit. And so that's what we heard from the townships, but kind of overwhelming support for, acquisition and management as a state WMA.
and Eric, we're concerned about all those things too. But then we have to also look at our number one job is to increase tax capacity in the county. And as Shar said, I don't think it's one or the other. When you look at this lake and this watershed, it's very well protected. Based on the COLA study that was done, they like to see 25% of a lake undeveloped and and the rest protected. This is like 3%. This lake will probably never get above 5% developed. So what you're doing here is you're taking out some premium potential riparian lots that could generate significant tax capacity for the county. And there's nothing else to really have on that lake. So it's already so well protected. So I'm trying to weigh both things here, and I'm trying to look at what's good for our school districts, what's good for our townships, what's good for the county, and what's good for the environment and protection of the resource. And it's a balancing act. So I don't buy into it's one or the other. You can do both.
So I have to ask the hard question. Do you need the county board's approval to move forward with this? This is a private sale between 3M and the land trust.
No, it's not necessary in this case because it's being transferred from the, the Minnesota Land Trust.
And that may
to
be,
DNR.
that may be the tough thing to think about here is, but in previous conversations that we've had relative to public lands versus private lands in the county, and if we want to go back and we want to take a look at the conversation that we just had about Varden Township, where we said there are many public lands that could be developed, that is their best use, and we have the ability to control that. And we took action to do that by converting some of these lands for development and for housing. In this case, the county really doesn't have the ability to regulate the sale from a private party to another private party. But if you look in here, the light green is all state land, the darker green is all tax forfeited, and the pink is all county land. It's right in the belt of where we have a lot of managed lands. And I don't disagree that there's more possibility, there's more potential tax capacity on this west arm. It's just, I don't know that the county has an opportunity to inject, certainly to have a comment and to comment on the process, they certainly have that right. But they don't really have any say in the sale of private land from one.
And I understand
Yep.
that. What I'm trying to accomplish here is, first of all, as you guys come in or as you're looking at land across the state of Minnesota, that you would, and your passion is to preserve land in the lakes.
Get all that.
But you also have to think about, there are people now that have to decide whether they can afford to stay in their homes because they cannot afford the property tax. And the other reason I'm bringing this up is hopefully people from the public will understand there's more to the question than, am I for conservation or am I for development? It's not an either or, it's an and. And that and affects everyone that owns property in whatever county you live in Minnesota. And so I understand, it doesn't matter what I think as far as your sale goes through, but it does matter to the public how, they need to understand what all goes into the.
I think this is Mantrap Lake is a pretty unique area. I think, I'm for the balance as well. But sometimes you gotta identify some areas for conservation and you can identify other areas for development. If this goes conservation, which I think it would be a good, you picked a good area for it, then I'd be more inclined to some of these other tracts that we've looked at that the county owns to put those into development. Even that 180 acres that we withheld, I'd be more inclined to go along with that one in exchange. But yeah, I think by putting these acres in the conservation, maybe we can identify some more tracts that can go into development.
And I agree with Commissioner Delahunt and Commissioner Christensen. We passed a no net loss policy a few years ago, which of course has no teeth to it. But I kind of question, how are we going to replace this 430 acres and potential for future development? I've already gotten a few phone calls and emails from people concerned about us taking public land up in Varden Township when I've been a commissioner for 6 years, and I know it's over 5,000, maybe over 10,000 acres that we've turned into public lands in Hubbard County since those last 6 years. So this is concerning to me, as Jeff has mentioned. We can't halt any of this happening, but you know how the three of us at least feel that there's got to be an end. It's an accumulative effect, I believe, is what Dave said in the past. It's 430 here, 2,700 with the old sheep ranch. You start adding these things up over time. I think about Lake LaSalle, that was in Fern Township, and how that was sold to the DNR, and how those taxpayers in Fern Township then had to pick up the bill. So like I say, I kind of wonder, how are we going to replace this stuff unless we keep selling off more of tax forfeited county lands?
when it gets frustrating too, because it seems to be a roundabout way for the DNR to grab more land. The DNR gets more land and they can't manage the stuff they have very well. Heck, I can't get the north axis of Long Lake repaired. It's been in disrepair for decades. You know, so it gets a little frustrating when you see this happening all the time and the county loses taxable market value. Yes, you get pilled, but it's minuscule compared to what could happen. And so much of our county is already tax forfeit land or public land. So when I see premium lakeshore going bye-bye to Pilt, I get concerned. Because we only have so much. And when I couple that with this watershed is so well protected already, I question, why do we need to do it?
From a watershed perspective, Mantrap Lake is within the watershed of Big Sand Lake, which is one of our priority lakes. And the watershed in itself is 63% protected, at last I looked. And so our goal is to get to that 75% watershed protection. So when you're looking at it just from a step back on the watershed perspective, we are not quite to the goal of 75%, but I hear you in terms of where we're at for Mantrap Lake. But from a larger watershed perspective, there's still more work to be done.
And just because riparian lots are put on the lake doesn't mean it's protected. We have a very strong shoreline ordinance that protects how many trees you can cut down, how much forage you can clear to lake. You can't just do what other counties do in this county. So our ordinance is a lot different than others and is very protective of our lakes.
Okay.
So I would ask that you take that under advisement, and I personally would like to see those 3 lots removed from the sale,
The 3 parcels.
the 3 parcels. But I understand I can't stop it. The frustrating part is it'll make me unhappy because I see this happening over and over and over again in our county. And at some point, the DNR needs to give some land back then, something, because this is starting to get out of hand.
And I know, circumstances are pretty unique with this one because, 3M and Minnesota Land Trust have been working together. We haven't really had a role in the, the land transactions or the negotiations around purchase of these parcels here. But we have had pretty limited acquisition, at least from a wildlife standpoint, for WMAs in Hubbard County. The only thing that kind of in my career here in Park Rapids was in addition to the growing chain WMA, the Fry Tract down on Bladder Lake, which I think was 60 acres, and that was probably 15 years ago. But I know there's been a lot of activity with the Heritage Forest Project with all, and a lot of that is because, potlatch lands. Those used to be kind of pseudo-public lands in the county. Pretty much anybody could hunt or fish or trap on those lands, and of course, change with the leasing program and the private sale, and so there's been a lot of loss of kind of outdoor recreation opportunities. We get calls all the time in our office, people looking for more places to hunt and to recreate in the county, and they don't have access to a lot of those potlatch lands anymore because they're in private ownership. And so that's a big project, that outdoor heritage, with the conservation fund now. But we didn't have any lands part of our WMA system in Hubbard County associated with that project. So this is pretty unique for us, and the kind of, probably only the second time in 20, 25 years I've been around that we've added to our WMA acres, or intended to add to our WMA acres here in Hubbard County. So it's fairly, as other folks have mentioned, it's a very unique property, kind of one of a kind, kind of northern Minnesota lakeshore property, and I think it would get a lot of attention and a lot of use and, a lot of support, for protecting this, kind of world-class shoreline, and on a quintessential northern Minnesota lake. So I guess that's just our kind of role in this, and it's, 3M has chose to sell to Minnesota Land Trust and are interested in conservation, and we're not doing anything with the center, the conference center and cabins and that type of thing, so that will remain on the tax rolls.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question, just so I understand. So you said that the funding was coming from the outdoor heritage funding, so that would be tax dollars?
Those are state tax dollars, yes.
Yeah.
So
So-
tax dollars are being used to take tax dollars away.
Right, that's the point I'm trying to make. So the public understands, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the sales tax dollars that, Minnesota citizens voted for, to support
I
efforts
know-
like conservation like this.
I know, but
Yep.
people lose sight of the big picture, so I just want to paint a bigger picture.
One last thing I've got a concern about is what the selling price will be. I did the same thing, looked up on the county website. These parcels come to $5,845,700. And I'm concerned if it's more is paid for that, then if the neighboring land property values will also go up, which in turn will then increase the property taxes for the people that are left to pay the property taxes on the neighboring properties. So like I say, that's a concern.
And to the value that we're paying appraised value, and that's not public information at this time, but it will be after the closing is complete in mid-March.
Before you guys leave, I don't want you to misconstrue what we're saying here. We're all for protecting the environment, protecting the resources here. And there are times exactly where your organization or Trust for Public Land purchases a set of property to protect resources, which makes perfect sense. We've done a couple of those. But as Shar said, in our world, it can't be one or the other all the time. It's gotta be a proper balance. And I think our ask is not that, I don't think it's, our ask is out of line at all. I think it's a reasonable ask for those 3 parcels to be removed. There's still plenty of land and plenty of protection going on.
Myself, I would take all of the western off of that. And that's, the potential tax capacity that just lies in those 4 parcels alone is incredible. And then perhaps the 00300 would be something the DNR would want to incorporate into their campground if the expansion was deemed necessary to do that. And that could be a parcel that would be more natural trails and so forth. But the eastern parcels, I don't have any problem with those at all, because I know that area is fairly sensitive in there. I just think the western ones would be good taxable land for the future use. Anything else? All right.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Yep, thanks for having us.
All right.
Hey, good morning. Good morning, Chair. Hey. We're ready to go to the next one. My agenda item is for the new sign policy we've been working on for a while here. I know Ted and Dave has dealt with signs on county lands recently, so this is just a draft policy. Brought it to the work session today. I know Ted was asking that I'd come and kind of present some of the information on it. I'll just go over some of the main points. First page is kind of just definitions of different terms, but I just want to say an advertisement sign shall be defined as an erected structure advertising a commercial, business, nonprofit organization, or private association. One other thing I want to say too is I talked to other counties around our area up here, and also looked into the DOT specs, and I tried following a lot of their specs, just kind of make it universal across the board, so we're not way different.
It's
but-
not easy, is it?
No.
We love consistency.
Yeah. But the lease site shall not be more than one established sign. The total lease site shall consist of no more than 300 square feet, so that's about 17 by 17 feet. I'm a loud talker, sorry. The thing I want to kind of discuss with you guys is the annual rental payment. A lot of people do $50 per year, but we can do $25 per year, we could do $60 per year. That's,
What I was thinking there, Corey,
Denise,
when they do the
Section
initial,
3.
application,
Yep.
I was thinking more like $100 for the initial application.
Okay.
Because staff is gonna have to go out
Yeah,
there
yep.
and mark out the
Yep.
area.
Okay.
With or without the current landowner or, person that wants to sign.
yep,
And then that's what I was thinking, maybe something like that, $100 for the first initial thing, and then $25 a year after that.
yeah, we could do,
I also have some concerns, but I think I'll let you continue before I hop in.
okay,
Overall, I like it, but I have a few concerns.
okay.
So, before you go on, thinking about the annual payment and then looking, it should be paid in advance before December 31st of the following year. So is $25 going to cover the cost for the staff time to process the annual payment? So I'm wondering if you should leave it at 50 versus 25.
Yeah, there's that, that's why we have this discussion, I guess.
And
Yeah,
do
that's
do
my
we have
thought
to
is
verify? The staff have to verify it's still their condition?
Yeah.
Has it changed? Assess it, as far as if it's still the same structure that was placed there in the first place. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, we do, later on I'll say that, but we do, inspect once a year, just like cabin leases. We like to, garden leases, hay leases, we always inspect at least once a year, so.
That was gonna be one of my questions too, is that say the sign gets deteriorated and they don't repair it. Can we go in then and cancel?
We do have the right to cancel, and then we have the right to give them so many days to take the sign down, and if not, we have the statutory right to go and remove it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, if they're inspecting once a year, it probably should stay at 50 then. They have to go look at it.
Yep. So just like other leases, we have a late fee, for, late payments, 30 days past due. This would be $25 for 30 days past due, and then excess of $60 may cause cancellation of the lease. An advertisement sign structure and placement, again, 300 square foot footprint, not taller than 15 feet. This just has some other stuff. It should not emit sounds. Again, I took a lot of these specs from other counties, so just trying to be a little bit universal. Should not be in the public road right-of-way, utility line right-of-way, or recreational trail right-of-way. And sign structure placement content must be approved by Hubbard County. So I don't know if does that sound good to you all?
I've got one of my concerns is, can anybody, say in a year and a half, I decide in District 5 to lease a half a dozen parcels, put up signs, vote for Ted, and then, because then I could, but, so I want to limit stuff like that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, if we did the
That was a great example.
So I'm thinking, my thought was if we had the initial fee, and then the yearly fee,
Yep.
if that was tied to a parcel. Because what I've seen when I looked, like I said, there's not a lot of these signs, but they're mostly like the Spearhead Center, Sleeping Fawn, I think it was the Third Crow Wing. They're businesses, and the signs are basically just pointing to where they're going. But they were signs for a business that's actually owned.
Sure.
So I would like to have it I don't know how this would work, some kind of requirement where, just some Joe Blow from Minneapolis or wherever can come up and say, yeah, I'd like to put up a sign here.
Yep.
Yeah,
And,
versus a billboard.
yeah,
you
we
want-
definitely don't want,
It has to identify a location.
yeah, yep, so, and we would definitely identify the location and identify the content that can be placed there.
But
Yeah.
like I say, even my first example,
Yep.
I go and I start rent, so sure, it's $50 for that first year, or $100 for that first year if we do that route.
Yep.
So it costs me $600, but then after the first year, I just take the signs down and let it go back.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I want to
Yeah, and the-
prevent just advertising, you know,
Yep.
I don't want us to be, all of a sudden have all
That's
these
a really
little,
good point.
little billboards
Yep.
all around on county line.
No,
just because
definitely
they
not.
can.
So there is a spec in here, it must follow Hubbard County Ordinance number 34, which regulates signs containing commercial speech intended to be viewed from any vehicular or pedestrian right of way. I don't know if that exactly says, like, what you're talking about, but yeah, I do support your view on that. There's only, most public land, we don't want signs on. That's just a fact, but there's instances like resorts there and, Spearhead Center.
And I guess my thought was, is I would like to provide something for the current signs that are in place.
Yep.
And I don't want to create something that all of a sudden we have a, proliferation of
Yep.
of
And,
signs going up just because we don't limit them.
yeah, yep. And maybe, it'd be something where new signs, not these ones that are kind of grandfathered in, but new ones, I'd come to the board and get approval from the board.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I say, I read this months ago and then started having all these ideas. and
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I want this to happen to the businesses and nonprofits and that are already have their signs up, but
Yep.
how do we prevent it from going crazy?
Yep. Yep, for sure.
Almost like it has to be a situation where they really don't have another option
Mhm.
for clearly identifying how to get to.
Yep,
And where
yep.
their location is.
Yeah,
How do
exactly.
we word that?
Yeah,
Yep. Yeah,
finding the right language for that would be important
Yeah.
because otherwise, somebody could claim you're discriminating against allowing them to have a sign on tax forfeited land. So you really have to narrow the policy down to exactly what you're gonna allow.
yep.
If you, so I'm looking at the sign ordinance in section 34. It actually addresses temporary signs during election. I think we want to be more direct than what
Sure.
this
Yep.
reads, because it doesn't actually define.
Sure. Would you like to see like, temporary signs are not allowed or,
Something like that, yeah.
political?
I don't know that you need to put them
Sure.
in this because they wouldn't be under a lease ordinance. They're covered by other items. You really just need to put in the origination. What is the original need for the sign? What's the purpose? Are there other options? We would walk through this is gonna be administered much like, a shoreland or a zoning ordinance in that it's gonna have all the, if, but, yeah, all those other things that have to happen in there, so.
Sure.
I think all of this is good. I think what we're missing is the original purpose that needs to go with it.
Yep. It's kind of like easements. If there's no other option, then we'll
Yeah,
work with
right.
an easement, but if there's another option, we're not gonna give you an easement.
And that's the
Easement.
best, probably the best language to have in there somewhere, is that
Yep.
there really has to be no other option for them.
Mm-hmm, yep,
And that's where I went back
And
to.
we'll consider it.
yep,
Was thinking about, now, this would be something where payments and everything would go through you. And
Yep.
that's kind of, one of my thought was, is if we had tied it to a certain parcel.
Yep,
Then that could
it will.
actually maybe be put on their tax statement.
Um,
That would make it better or not.
So the payment, probably not answering your question quite right, but the payment, it'll come to us and we split it out to each township and school district that sign's on,
Okay.
the parcel's on. So that $50 a year, say in your instance, it'll get sent to whatever school district that it, 20% will go to the or 40% to the school district and,
Okay, okay. And that's something
40% to the township or whatever, so.
and that's something that's easy for your office to handle?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
So we have a lot of different leases, garden leases and, hay leases and pasture leases that
Okay.
we split all, we have a spreadsheet that we split all that stuff out every year. And
Okay.
we know exactly what districts they go to, all the money goes to. Mhm. Yep. But, Yeah, I'll for sure put some wording in for that. With trees, the leasee shall not cut, remove, or damage any live trees or tree reproduction on county managed lands without written permission from the lessor. And then they would just have to pay, you know, stumpage price for any trees they cut, but I'm guessing within a 300 square foot area, it's not gonna be too much.
Yeah, that'd be what, 3 by 10?
Yeah.
6 by 6 would be,
Yeah, it'd be about 17 feet by 17 feet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
that's pretty good. And then that area, I'm assuming the leasee would be able to mow the lawn around the
Yeah.
sign and
Yep.
stuff like that?
Yep, yep, it's still considered public land, but they can kinda manicure it like they'd like. All abandoned signs are illegally placed will be disposed of pursuant to statute. We'll inspect the lease site annually. And then, they'll have to make any necessary corrective actions in the time frame indicated. The lease may be transferred, but will require a new lease agreement between the new leasee and lessor. The lease may be terminated by either party giving a 60-day written notice. And lease sites that are subject to the sale of the land may be terminated by a 60-day written notice by our department. The leasee shall have 3 months to remove all structures, if terminated or canceled or abandoned. If structures are not removed within that 3 months time frame, we'll remove it, and then charge them for cost for removal. And then no refund or advance rental payment shall be made for leases canceled or terminated before the end of the year. And then just the last correspondence, the correspondence and notice of payments due will be mailed to the primary leasee as signed in the lease agreement. And then we'll sign the lease agreement, or we'll have the recorder's office record it for us. So, I kind of want to keep it as simple as possible. I don't want, cabin leases to get kind of complicated with taxes and garbage disposal, and it'd be nice if we could just keep this pretty simple, and
I agree.
we're as long, I really want you guys, if we do come with issues, that you guys would stick up for us. If, you know, there's some landowners out there that could get pretty fired up, and it'd be nice to have the support.
So we're looking for the ability to sign something that would otherwise on a road sign be signed in blue or brown, right? Or, so we're really looking to sign access to something that is surrounded by tax forfeited land, right? And the definition, public or recreational use, that's what we're trying to identify. We're trying to find a way to sign things, access to things like that are through or behind tax forfeited lands. So it feels to me like we're missing an opening paragraph in here that talks about the intent and the purpose of this. We go straight to the definitions. So I think that we'll find a way to,
Yeah.
I think the administration pieces are pretty clear and straightforward. We just have to identify what the permissible requests are. Because like you said, it's not intended to be whatever sign, this sign, it's intended to be, the one up in your area is it's access to a recreation area?
Yeah.
What's the name of that one again?
A Spearhead,
Yep.
Nielsen Spearhead Center, yeah, so they're a nonprofit, but yeah, it's a recreation area.
Yeah, so I mean, it's recreational purpose, so they might otherwise have a brown sign through Department of Transit, or through the Highway Department that says, here's, you know, not a public access, but here's a public interest. And
If
they're,
it's on a county state aid highway or a county road, it's easy for the highway department to manage the signs.
Yes,
But
yeah.
when we're get out onto township roads
yeah,
or
and that,
private roads with tax forfeited next to it, then.
and even if we had the brown sign that said attraction here, they might still want the name of the organization as the kind of sign that we're trying to permit here, so people know I found it. So, I think that's where we're missing, is we're missing a paragraph or two of, the purpose of this policy. I think the definitions in the administration are all pretty clear. And I know a couple of places we could look for that. In tying it to a location, I don't know that we want to go so far as to require that they have a survey to identify the spot they can put the sign, or if we want to get to the point of having GPS coordinates where the sign can go. But we want to make sure that we're putting it in a place
Yep.
that's consistent with our other sign policy for county roads and state roads, because we don't want to obscure anything, or we want them to be readable, but we don't want them to be in the way.
Yep.
We can put a couple of paragraphs together. I know a couple of places to look.
Yeah, if you wanna help me out with that, that's my first time working with a policy, so. Yeah, but,
It was a good first job.
And hey, we proudly say we beg and borrow from all over.
yep.
Okay, any
Uh,
other questions or comments?
Probably be back next week, so.
We might not be back next week. That means we'd have this done by Wednesday.
Or no, it might be, yeah, it might be another
We'll be back,
few weeks.
we'll be back as soon as we can put that together, but I
Yep.
think we understand what your intent is. If we can come up with something that, gets us there, I think we'll bring it right to a board meeting.
Yep. And for our department on this wildlife area, we'd like to stay neutral. You know, we don't really have any ties with WMAs, so please don't take from Peter to pay Paul, or whatever that saying is. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, that is everything on our agenda.
We do have a brief general government meeting, and then we have at 11:15 the DOC meeting. So it seems like we're gonna be able to get those both in today. I'd just recommend we take the general government meeting and take a quick break and come back to that.
Okay.
So we would just need a motion to adjourn this one.
I'll move.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor? Aye? Opposed? All right, we're adjourned.